Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to MOV Plus. I hope you've had an awesome day. Looking at the warm-up guys, we're gonna start things with 2 minutes of cardio of your choice. What we're gonna do is mix two things together. So we're gonna see some up downs for 10 reps, like that, and then we'll move into some lateral plate jumps for 20. And those two things will go back and forth for the first 2 minutes. From there, the next 3 minutes, what we'll do is each minute, it'll be 30 seconds of running high knees into 30 seconds of air squats. Okay, good to go?
Yep.
All right, starting in 10. So 2 minutes of cardio choice, guys. You can pick what you want to do here. You can do 1 movement, 2 minutes, whatever you want to do, as long as we get that heart rate up and get nice and warmed up. And go for it. So going with our 10 up downs to start. Remember, with these warm-ups, guys, you want to think about just easing into things. So go slow out of the gate, think about good body positioning, getting everything active, getting everything nice and loose. And then as you start to feel that warm-up kick in, you can start to ramp the intensity up, focus more on the heart rate. Once Em's gone through these 10 up downs, she's going to do 20 lateral jumps over the plate. Now we've deliberately gone with quite a low plate, and that's just so we can kind of ease into things, make it nice and simple. Just going back and forth there. The feet are going to stay together, and she's jumping sideways. It's not a plate facing jump. She's going to just face one way and go across the plate. Nice. All right, so back into another round. So you want to think about if you are doing the up downs like Em is, guys, you want to make sure you're really strong through that midline when you hit the bottom of the movement. So you can see when Em's feet jump out the back and she hits the brakes to rebound back out again, she's making sure she's not dropping through those hips or going loose. She's staying really tight, really rigid. And then nice tall stand up at the top. We want to make sure those hips are nice and open. Last thing we want to be short-cutting that movement and getting really tight and matted down through those hips. Now, a good idea with this sort of movement, guys, keep the eyes kind of cast down just a little bit. Keep yourself aware of where that plate actually is. Last thing we want is to be having your eyes sort of drifting around ahead and then miss where the plate is, go for a tumble over the top of it. So 20 more seconds. All right, back to the up downs. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So we're moving into the high knees now for 30 seconds, air squats for 30 seconds, and that sequence will repeat for the next 3 minutes. So this one, nice simple movement, guys. We just want to get those knees up to hip height. It's a really good one to get that heart rate spiked up nice and high. So we've gone through that initial 2 minutes of just kind of getting the body going. Now we're going to start to push things a little bit. So 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and go into air squats. So set up the air squats, guys. We want the feet about shoulder width, toes slightly turned out. The knees are going to drive outwards as well. So think toes and knees point same direction. We want to think about getting your hips below the height of the knee. So we're sitting right down to a nice deep squat. If you have tight hips or if you're new to squatting, guys, take your time with it. Even hang on to something in front of you so you can really sit back on those heels. We want to get that mobility side of things looking really good. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So back on the running high knees. So just staying real light on the balls of the feet, guys. Feel your heels clunking into the ground. Try to pick them up a little bit, be a little more quiet on the toes, and nice upright body position. Ten more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and back on air squats. Now one thing you'll notice Em does here with these squats is every time she sits down into it, see her arms will pop up as well. Now the reason for that is it's going to help encourage her upper body, so her sort of thoracic, sort of ribs and upwards, stay nice and upright. It's always tempting to kind of slouch down when we get tired, so the arm swinging up will encourage better position. It's also going to act as a little bit of like a rebound, kind of help us pop up out of the bottom, so it's going to add to that movement. 3, 2, 1, and go for running high knees again. So last minute on this one. So if you're feeling good, this is where you want to push the tempo. Get that heart rate nice and high. Always good to rev the engine before we get into the hard stuff. 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and last lot of air squats. Last thing we'll kind of touch base with on these guys is make sure that your heels stay on the ground. You don't want to be rolling up onto the toes or collapsing in off that outside ridge of your foot. And keep the feet nice and grounded. So it does help if you think about kind of trying to drive everything outwards, like you're trying to slide your feet apart. Three, 2, 1, and done. All right, that is the warm-up done, guys. Have a little bit of recovery time. We're gonna have a look at MOVE next. All right, guys, we're gonna check out the MOVE workout now. So how this one is gonna run is we have a 10-minute alternating EMOM. Now, what we'll see on each of these minutes, we're going to work for 45 seconds, rest for 15. Minute 1 is gonna be dumbbell deadlifts, which is gonna look like this. So going from ground to stand up. Okay, and then minute 2, we're going to move into a cardio of your choice. We're going to go with burpees. You can do the same as us, or you can make your own kind of choice with that one. Mix it up a little bit if you want to, but we'll just be going back and forth between those two stations. Remember, working for 45 and resting for 15, so you're always guaranteed that 15 seconds, which means you've got to really push it when the 45 is on. Good to go? Yep. All right, starting in 10, going with the deadlifts first. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So depending on what equipment you have at home, guys, if you have a single dumbbell, kettlebell, backpack, you've got the double dumbbells like M here, it's all going to be relatively the same. The main characteristics we want to see across the board is that nice close stance with the feet, nice vertical shins, so she's not letting those knees drift forward, she's stretching on those hamstrings, and the most important one, the back staying straight. Okay, she's not curling over, she's not reaching extra depth by changing her spinal position. She's making sure she hinges at the hips. If you happen to just have the one dumbbell, you can either do a single-sided style, or you can grab either head of the dumbbell and work in that same position. Cool. And resting. And move to our cardio section next. So on for 45, off for 15. You guys can pick which movement you do here. We're going to go with burpees. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So the two markers with this movement, guys, is we want to see your body completely flat to the ground, and that is chest included. So sometimes we see when people move through this a little too quickly, it's hips, stomach, but they kind of shortcut that drop down chest to the ground. So make sure you get fully flat. The other marker is at the top there. You're seeing she's leaving the ground in the jump, and hands are contacting either above or behind the head. Either way, we want to see a nice open hip position. So imagine you're reaching for the roof or reaching for a rafter over the top of yourself. And it's just a steady grind through these, working for the 45 seconds. And resting. All right, so we're going to move back to the deadlifts next. Going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So I mentioned before, guys, not changing spinal position. If you find that you do have to round off just to touch the front ends of the dumbbells to the ground, just don't do it. Just go halfway down the shins like Em's doing there. That's sort of like a modified version. And over time, your flexibility will open up. You just challenge it that little bit further each time, but make sure we're not sacrificing the positioning just for the sake of getting the touch on the ground. So really should be feeling hamstrings, glutes, a little bit of low back in there as well, but generally the lower half of things, you try to deliberately put emphasis on those working. And going to keep a little gap between the knees at all times, so make sure we don't ever collapse in the middle there. 3, 2, 1. All right, resting again. Three, 2, 1, and go for it. And we want to try to utilize this sort of roll down, roll up method with the burpees, guys. It does not have to be that over fatiguing strict push-up kind of motion. We want to make this a little bit more sort of high rep. We don't want to be limited by the chest kind of packing up on us. We want to be able to just move through these non-stop. So you'll notice that when M comes down, as soon as the feet hit the ground, The knees are going to drop down straight after, hips are going to drop down straight after that, then the belly, then the chest, everything kind of rolls down, and then it's reverse order back up again. Okay, and as she gets up, she hits that nice jump at the top. Doesn't have to be a big jump, we just do need to leave the ground though, so that's the marker at the top there. And resting. Three, two, one, and go for it. Now, obviously with this, guys, the 45 seconds, that's your work phase, 15 is your rest. If you really start to blow up cardio-wise or muscular endurance-wise and you have to take rests, you can do that. But try to keep in your mind that you're only going to rest if you absolutely have to. Try to push that recovery time to the 15 seconds and see how long you can hold on for. If we hit the point of technical breakdown, the form starts to get a little bit sketchy, a little bit dangerous, try to fix it up. And if you absolutely can't, dumbbells down for a moment, take a quick breather, and then straight back in. Five more seconds. Okay, resting. So just crossing over the halfway marker now, guys. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and go for it. Sometimes we see if people really battle with burpees, guys, this sort of stepping out and kind of slinking down to the ground. It's a little bit kind of sketchy looking. What I would suggest you do if that is the case is work with an elevated burpee. So what you would do is maybe take the edge of your couch or something that's got a little bit of height to it and go hands on the edge of that. You'll come down chest to the edge of the couch, then jump the feet in and jump up from there. And that little bit of elevation just makes the whole bottom part of it a little bit easier. So you can do that. If you feel like you have trouble getting to the floor, go for something a little bit higher at the front end. Just make sure it is stable to work with. And resting. So 2 more cycles to go. Three, 2, 1, and go for it. Now, no matter what implement you're working with, guys, whether it's single or double dumbbells, whether it's kettlebells, whether it's a backpack, whatever you've got, you always want to think about keeping the weight as close to your center of gravity as possible. So when we talk about that, we think about where your ankle bone is. It's just forward of that. I always like to think about like the knots in your shoelaces. That's kind of the middle point of our body, right? And we want to have the weight running really close to that. So you'll find that those nice vertical shins, that's kind of like the rails that the weights are going to run on. We want to try and stay in line with those. And if you are using something kind of big like a backpack and it's out in front, do the best you can. Pull it right in. I'm not saying to graze the shins up or anything, but keep it as close as you can. And that way we're going to minimize any stress on that low back. All right, so resting. Three, 2, 1, and go for it. If you're someone who finds you have trouble with the top end of this, like knowing where is an open hip position, you might have that kind of kinesthetic awareness to be like, am I open yet or am I still crowded at the hips there? Use a touch marker. So if you can work in maybe a doorway or something like that, something that's sort of just outside of your vertical reach is a good idea. And that way you've got that inch or two jump, but that's just going to ensure that you've got to reach and open those hips up. That can be a good little method to use if you're not sure of that top position. Three, 2, 1, and resting. Okay, so we've got 1 more cycle of each. Three, 2, 1, and go for it. Looking for that nice controlled tempo with the movement. Sort of thinking 1 to 2 seconds down, 1 to 2 seconds up. Find yourself just rapid firing like one or two reps per second. You're blitzing through it. And just check in that the form is still looking good. Speed's a good thing, but only if we're mechanically sound as we go through it. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose. So just make sure you check in. The speed that Em's going at now is a good pace to go at because she's got everything where it needs to be, but she's still knocking out a lot of reps in this 45 seconds. And resting. Okay, so 1 more minute back on your cardio of choice. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So last round on this one. So if you're feeling good, you can crank it up a little bit. Just make sure that form still stays tidy. Try to mimic this nice high hip position that Em's going for. She comes up, she's sort of bringing like toes towards her wrists, so she's getting everything to jackknife up, and then it's just a straight stand up. So that, as opposed to kind of squatting out of it or tucking into a ball and jumping out of it, she's able to get herself up onto flat feet and get her heels on the ground, which is going to be much less wear and tear on the knees in the long term. Ten more seconds. And time. All right, guys, that is the move workout done. Have some water, have a bit of rest time, and then we'll check out the finisher next. Okay, so we're going to check out the finisher now. With this one, is going to be 6 minutes, and it's an alternating EMOM. So what we're going to see on minute 1 is glute bridge ups. So we're going to do this for the full 60 seconds, and it is just driving those hips up nice and high. From there, we move to minute 2, which is going to be 30 seconds on right and left on a side plank hold. So once we hit the 30-second mark, we would roll it across and do the other side there as well, and that goes for 6 minutes. You good to go, Em?
Yep.
All right, starting in 10. Going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So obviously this is going to be a lot about midsection here, guys, so put a lot of focus and intention into the muscles we're trying to contract. This particular one is going to be a little bit more through the back of the hips, so glutes, hamstrings, even a little bit of low back, but we want to think about abs at the same time. So think of this all as a team working together. The setup, we want to have the feet about hips width apart, and a lot of pressure and a lot of emphasis through the heels going through the ground rather than the toes. You can have the feet flat, but try to push more through the heels. And we're trying to get the hips up to the point where I could draw a straight line from Em's knees through her hips down to her shoulders. So at the peak of this movement, it should end right up onto your traps and shoulders. Shouldn't have any of your sort of mid or upper back on the ground. 15 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and going for side plank. So this one we're setting up either legs straight, or we can even go legs bent, which we might have a look at on the next round. Or there we go, so bent like that, that's the scaled version. So basically with this, we're thinking about this side section of your abs, the stuff that kind of braces and stabilizes when we're doing a lot of our squatting and deadlifting and all those things. So you will find that underside is where it's really going to be working really hard. We're going to have a nice active shoulder on the left shoulder there, holding ourselves up. 3, 2, 1, and switching. Make sure we're not kind of collapsing into that shoulder and going slack and loose. We want to make sure everything is active and held up. And we're just looking for a nice straight line down Emily's midline there. So head through shoulders, through hips, down between the feet there. If you find that you're kind of bent back or bent any which way, try and get your body as straight as possible. Okay, 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and going back to glute bridge ups. So let's have a look at the tempo that Em's operating at here. We're moving for the minute no matter what, so it is going to benefit us greatly to work on a really controlled tempo rather than just rapid firing. Let's look at really good control and really good muscle activation. So she's sort of working with about a 2 or even 3 second up and down phase, and at either end there's about a half a second pause just to really establish good control. And just like the side planks, this is going to tie in really well to a lot of those big kind of compound movements like squatting, deadlifting, all that sort of thing. It's just going to add that layer of support. "15 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So let's go with that scaled version this time, Em. So this is going to be sort of the drop back version. If the long version with the legs straight just feels too difficult to hold on for those 2 blocks of 30 seconds, let's regress to this, go for a higher level of quality, and just have those feet kind of hooked up behind you. So you'll have your body weight kind of resting on the outside of that bottom knee, but everything else should be the same. Straight through the body, active shoulder, and that underside of that mid-ab section there doing the work. 3, 2, 1, and switching. And one thing that sometimes happens when people get a little bit fatigued with this is the top shoulder, so it'll be M's left shoulder at the moment, starts to kind of round down and lean to the ground. Everything starts to get in a bit of a funky position. So make sure you stay nice and square. You should be able to stack the shoulders on top of each other. 3, 2, 1, and back to glute bridges. Now we want to think about knee position with this movement, guys. This is going to be a movement that's going to help assist things like squatting and deadlifting. And in squatting and deadlifting, we always have a very deliberate knee position. So we want to keep open, and it's also going to kind of tie into where my toes are pointing, which is going to be about hips width pointing straight ahead. The knees are going to be in that same spot. So if you're doing this, especially being the finisher at the end of the workout, you might be a little bit fatigued. If you feel like the knees are just kind of sinking in and collapsing into a bad position, let's wind them out. Feel like we're not only pushing down through the heels, but also trying to split the ground, so there's an outwards pressure as well, and that's going to help really get those glutes fired up. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and switching into the side plank one last time. So we want to think about, with this being a static hold, the temptation is always just to hold our breath the whole time. Okay, what you want to do is just take short little breaths. So still keep getting that oxygen in, but maintain that brace at the same time. So a little bit of a balancing act. We definitely don't want to just hold our breath the entire time, because otherwise you'll just hit exhaustion. You won't be able to hold for the full length of time. 3, 2, 1, and switching. So last 30 seconds of the finisher. 3, 2, 1, and done. All right, that is the finisher done, guys. Have a little bit of a chill, and we're going to go through some stretching to finish off. All right, guys, so we're going to wind things down now, a little bit of mobility work just to finish the body off, get things feeling nice after all that hard work. The first drill we're going to go through is a standing side bend. So we're going to chuck a minute on the clock with this one, and basically what will happen is we're just going to go side to side very, very slowly, reaching over the top. So we've crossed the feet over. Okay, the leg that goes around the back is the side that we're going to stretch from. So we're actually going to be reaching away from that. And it's about a 5 or 10 second hold at that peak stretch. And then we would switch the feet back around, go back the other side. So this is going to hit a whole bunch of places. It's going to go right from lat, even maybe a little bit of tricep if you're really tight through there, down through the oblique, down through the side of the hip, and then down into the ITB as well. So it's a really nice one because it hits a lot of things all at once. And that crossover with the feet just kind of winds the stretch up that little bit more, kind of anchors that leg in and allows us to push out on that hip. All right, so that's drill one. The second drill we're going to do is going to be looking at a little bit more sort of hips, quads, that sort of thing. So kneeling hip extension. We're going to take a spot on the ground here. Hands are going to go back on the ground. Now, for some of you, this might be far enough as a stretch. You might find it that's already kind of far enough. So if you can, though, we're going to bridge the hips off the heels, hold for a moment, and then relax it back down. So we'll chuck another minute on the clock there. And just working in and out through the hips. So this is going to be a lot of like quads, up through the hip flexors there. You'll probably find as well that you'll get a good stretch through your upper body as well, which is why I really like this stretch. It's going to hit biceps, shoulders, pecs all at the same time. Now, if you find this really, really hard to get into, if you chuck a little something underneath your hands, like to elevate it up, so maybe some couch cushions or maybe lean on the edge of a coffee table if it's sturdy enough, that sort of thing can make for an easier position. And as I said, you can do this either as a static position, just holding the bottom there, or if you feel like you can move in and out of this hip extension here. So the best way we can do this, guys, is tensing the butt and tensing the abs. So we find that the pelvis is going to kind of almost roll back a little bit as I drive through, and that's going to crank that stretch up even more. Alrighty, so that's the second drill, guys. If you have time, let's go through both of them 3 or 4 times, get the body nice and loose. Otherwise, we will catch you next time. That's been your Move Plus workout.